A lot's been made about Jeremy Corbyn's alleged shortcomings as Labour leader. His inability to unite the party, his alleged ineptitude in dealing with the media, his disposition to making jam and visiting his allotment at times of crisis. Whatever you think of those claims, it's clear that he's received far more attention than his rival, Owen Smith, over the last several months. Now, what makes that doubly strange in the case of Owen Smith, that there is genuinely a lot to talk about. Mr. Smith seems the most gaffe-prone politician I've yet to encounter. That includes the likes of Nigel Farage. He's the Prince Philip of the Labour Party. Indeed, on the very first day of his candidacy on live television, the Andrew Marr show, no less, he said he was both for and against austerity, and all within the space of 20 seconds. The next day, he was very eager to talk about how normal he was. He was from a normal family, he had normal children, a normal wife, all in counterposition to his rival, Angela Eagle, a lesbian woman. Now, Smith didn't explicitly place Eagle and her sexuality in relation to his, but the message was clear. I'm a white, straight, educated, middle-class man. I'm the only kind of leader there is. And now I know what you're thinking. You're saying, Aaron, you're being very unfair on the guy. He was just getting started. He was, in the public eye for the very first time. It's natural there would be some errors, sure. But the thing is, things have got worse, haven't they? Last week we saw Owen Smith talking to an audience saying how important it was that Labour attracted Tory voters at the last general election. He said that while Corbyn had also emphasised that same point, he didn't really sketch out the scale of what was necessary, winning 2 million Tory voters in over 100 constituencies in order to form a government. His quote was this.
What you won't have from me is some, lunatic at the top of the Labour Party. You'll have someone who tries to form a coherent narrative about what's wrong with Britain.
Now, why are such comments simply unacceptable in 2016? Firstly, it's ableist, it's not useful, it stigmatises issues of mental health. Secondly, it betrays the fact that Owen Smith, when it comes to keeping it comradely, is totally insincere. He wasn't only using inappropriate language in regard to Labour members, supporters or even the general public. He was using it in regard to the leader of the opposition, talking about taking issues of mental health and stigma all too lightly. At a televised debate with Jeremy Corbyn, Owen Smith, that he would negotiate with ISIS, that they would be around the table in finding a political settlement in Iraq and Syria. Among other things, those comments led to a tweet from the Bob Crow Brigade in Syrian Kurdistan, where they said, "At Owen Smith, want to talk to ISIS? Tell that to the martyrs of Manbij." They proceeded to tweet at the former Shadow Foreign Secretary Hilary Benn, who was all too keen to instrumentalise the history of the international brigades and the Spanish Civil War, but now chose to ignore the comments of his colleague, Owen Smith. Then on Sunday, tragedy really did turn to farce. At an Owen Smith event in Hull, a member of the audience asked Smith if they could ask a personal question. Owen Smith's response? He pointed to his groin and said, 29 inches, in a leg measurement, of course. His people have already responded to this, and it's like the most funny. They're like, he was making a joke about his height, and he was like saying, about in a leg, what's in a leg? Who's ever made a joke about the height and referred to in a leg measurement? Now for lad banter Labour, that might be quite funny. But for those of us serious about radical politics, the power of ideas and transforming Britain for the better, it's utterly terrifying. But more than the gaffes, more than a campaign that's now bordering on a joke, more than Smith's terminal case of foot and mouth disease, are his recent remarks on Prevent, on immigration and low pay, and on asylum seekers and access to public services. It's particularly in regard to immigration and low pay that Smith's dedication to membership of the EU and his promise, potentially, for a second referendum on EU membership is revealed for what it is, a naked political calculation.
The Prevent strategy that is grossly undermined and under-resourced in this country ought to be right at this forefront of Labour's policy, making sure that we foster better community relations in Britain.
Given Prevent is a racist policy towards not only Muslims but people of colour, given its intention is to literally breed distrust by institutions, by the state, towards certain minorities, that's a totally ridiculous thing to say. Prevent has no place in any country which calls itself tolerant, democratic and multicultural. Why did Smith make those comments? I think, as so often, he's uninformed on the issue and he speaks before he thinks. On immigration, Smith said that his wife is a school teacher where they live in South Wales, and that schools in their local area are under pressure from significant numbers into South Wales of people fleeing from the Middle East. The most recent Home Office figures show that Ronderson and Taff has settled just 18 Syrian refugees. That's not families, that's individuals. How many of them are children? You could probably count it on your hands. Are they stretching the local school system? That's just ridiculous. In that same interview, Smith said that immigration in some parts of the country was simply too high, and that immigrants from certain parts of the EU, and remember this is the guy that wants us to stay in the European Union, had led to a decline in overall wages in certain sectors. As with his claims around asylum in South Wales, as with his ideas about negotiating with ISIS, as with his views on Prevent, this is totally ill-informed. There is no evidence for this claim whatsoever. He said it was absolutely true. Owen, it was absolutely false. The solution to low-pay Britain, whether or not we chose to stay in the EU, has nothing to do with immigration. Its solutions? A higher minimum wage, greater protection and rights for those in trade unions, and public control of certain industries to create jobs where they're most needed. At the outset, we were told that while Smith might lack the authenticity of Corbyn and his decades-long commitment to values and policies of the radical left, what we would get is a principled politician who's more capable and better at public relations. Well, that's what Kezia Dugdale, Sadiq Khan and the vast majority of the Parliamentary Labour Party think. But if their idea of a PR-savvy, slick, media-friendly politician is cock jokes, made-up facts, and a mouth that clearly works more quickly than a brain, I guess we'll have to disagree. Smith's candidacy is a farce, as is the reputation of anyone who's chosen to associate themselves with it.